In the 1970s, two young brothers were playing in their garden when they uncovered something unusual buried in the soil. Soon, their family was haunted by strange, unexplainable events that eventually spread to others. The chilling encounters remain unexplained but continue to capture curiosity decades later. Today, we explore the mystery of the Hexham Heads. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the unknown. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
So they're talking about like curses and hexes and stuff like that, as in like they dug something up and then now they're cursed? That's so foul.
Yeah, it's like a little landmine for these kids that are just hanging out in the garden. Suddenly, boom, a bomb of paranormal activity goes off.
Come on, man. Like, that's so unfortunate. And I feel like it's something also that could happen to anybody. All right, like if you believe that's something that happens, or, you know, there's hexes or curses or whatnot.
And there are.
You're just a kid being a kid. Okay, well, hold on.
And there are.
I hope not. That's where I stand. How many times have I climbed a tree or like gone somewhere I'm not supposed to as a kid, or dug something up, or turned over a rock or whatnot? To find anything aside from just bugs is a little too much, right? Even if it's like, oh, that's just a dead animal, that could be traumatizing, let alone like a body or a bunch of things that are cursed or whatnot. And then all of a sudden, like, how are you equipped to handle that? You're just a kid. Your parents aren't going to believe you. Other kids in school may make fun of you.
Yeah, dude, you're just out there touching grass, and that's why we here at the Task Force HQ don't touch grass.
We don't touch it.
We live in our bunkers,
we do.
And we look from afar, but stay in the nice, secure inside.
Right.
Dude, I remember, little anecdote, I was a kid, like you said, climbing trees. I was with my cousin. One time I fell out of a tree, chest first into the creek, and I got up out of it. I'm messy and muddy and everything, and my friend, or my cousin rather, took a stick and pushed something over that I had landed on. There was a full saw blade in the creek, right under where I landed, right where my heart was. And I'm like, what in the final destination is this? Dude, you can find all sorts of gnarly things out there. They don't always have to be cursed.
That's true. Yeah, you could just have dangerous objects, things that people just throw away.
My cousin, though, he definitely, I don't know, maybe he sparked the intrigue in the paranormal because he would make all sorts of stories about the woods behind my house up, scary things coming out. He actually terrified me. But this particular episode, the Hexham Heads, is really interesting because it has a fascinating story. Of course, it's a cold case because I'll tell you right now, these Hexham Heads, these stone heads that we're going to talk about, they go disappearing. We don't know where they are anymore, so we can't get to the bottom of it. But the theories are awesome. They are all over the place. And so I feel like it's a perfect mid-October kind of spooky episode to talk about with a little bit of believer and non-believer all within it.
I would like to think that it's missing because some righteous person took them and destroyed them.
And put them in a museum.
Yeah.
Destroyed them and then put them in the museum. That's what he does. Indiana Jones.
Yeah. And now they're there in pieces.
Yeah, dude, I can see that act genuinely being part of this story. Someone says, oh, this is foul. Crush them into a dust and blow them into the breeze. But speaking of the season, we got a lot going on at redwebpod.com, the number one way to support the show. You can review us for free. You can share this podcast with other mystery lovers in your life for free, or come support us directly, get the podcast ad-free, and a bunch of exclusive stuff going out every single week. This week on Friday, we have the classic horror movie Halloween on board just in time for the season on Movie Club. So come hang out, check that out. Also this week, we have an exclusive poll. Things like deciding what research outlines we put out, what your favorite haunted spots are, perhaps maybe where we'll go someday will be in these polls, or maybe decide what next horror game we'll play. That's happening on Wednesday. But with that said, I think it's time. I want to dive right in because there's a lot to discuss with the Hexham Heads. But with this one, I do also want to say there were a lot of sources, and a lot of these sources just out the gate provided conflicting information. I'll try to highlight those when those happen if they're at a important moment in the story. But ultimately, Kat, our researcher, did the best job possible to provide as much detail while staying accurate and being truthful to the story as we know it. So let's dive in. This begins in February of 1971. We have brothers Colin and Leslie Robson, aged 11 and 8 respectively, so they're quite young, and they're working around in the garden. Maybe they're playing around a little bit at their family home in Hexham, Northumberland, England. Though here is our first conflicting information, because the BBC reports that the heads were found a little bit north of here, not too far, at Hadrian's Wall, which is, again, just north of Hexham, and it's right there on the border between Scotland and England. Now, while digging in the garden, the boys stumbled across something strange. Upon closer inspection, the boys noticed that these were 2 stone heads, and they were quite small, only about 2 inches tall, or about 6 centimeters, and although they could fit comfortably in the palm of each of their small hands, these stones are said to have felt surprisingly heavy given their small size. So right here, I have for you an image of both of the boys and one of the heads that they are holding.
I don't like that. It's a creepy little thing.
It's kind of creepy.
It's very creepy. Kind of looks like a little monkey head.
You know what? It does, like the monkey Ace Ventura had.
Yeah.
What kind of monkey was that?
No.
That was cute. This is a little spooky. The eyes are off center, like...
Yeah, this one's a little... Yeah, just 2 little boys with their bowl haircuts.
Yeah, that's true. Although, as you kind of mentioned, these heads are a little eerie at first glance. They're simple in design, right? They're nondescript, kind of generic faces, nothing super overt, but each head carving also appeared to have kind of a neck area. The second one that I'll show you in a future photo, you can see it more clearly, but it's not just a spherical head. And this has led a lot of people to believe that these heads might have once been attached to a full statue or something larger, but either way, we just have the heads on record. Now, one of these heads was dubbed the Boy, given it seemingly had a little bit more masculine features of the skull, line marks on the head seemed to resemble shorter hair, and the other one was dubbed the Girl due to the larger eyes and more effeminate features. To me, they're both pretty distinct in their own ways, but I don't see it either way. This is just the kind of nicknames that they use. Otherwise, it's A and B or whatever.
Right.
Now, after cleaning them off a little bit, getting all the dirt out of the pores and things, the boys then brought them back into their home. And not long after, the family started experiencing strange occurrences. For example, the family reported that the heads would move around the house, even though it was pretty clear that no one had touched these heads or been in the room at the time. They also claimed that eventually this would escalate and bottles would go flying across the room, shattering on the opposite wall. Very poltergeist type of activity stemming from the day that they found these heads. Some reports even claim that the parents began to complain of headaches and that the boy's sister found glass shards in her bed. So whatever this was, it was like escalating to a level of more danger. Now, what's even more terrifying is that these eerie paranormal occurrences didn't just stop with the Robsons. You and I have talked about all sorts of poltergeist stories over the years, and normally we're able to dissect in there what might be going on psychologically or what's going on with the family, but what's interesting is that the next door neighbors, the Dodd family, also reported strange occurrences around the same time that the heads were discovered. I wasn't sure now how close these two families were or how intimately aware of the heads they were, so I'm not sure if there was a psychological contagion knowing about these heads, but I did find it very interesting that it's kind of emanating out from this house now. In fact, in the Dodd household, their son would feel as if his hair was being pulled, even though he would react instantly, he'd turn around and whatnot. Never was there anything there. But this is where it gets stranger. Nellie Dodd, the mother, reported seeing a half-man, half-goat type of creature in the middle of the night. Now, some reports state that she saw the creature examining her feet while she was in bed sleeping one night, which to me starts to feel a little bit like sleep paralysis.
I know.
Oh,
Yep.
right, the fetish. Got it, my bad.
Yep.
You know those demons, those half-goat, half-men?
Demons be freaks, you know what I mean?
He might have been licking his lips a little bit going,
Oh, no.
Tootsies. Hey, listen, if the bottom half is goat, This guy doesn't have toes, so maybe he's just jealous.
True, he could be jealous. It could be
like,
a form of jealousy. You're absolutely correct.
Like, I bet you could balance so good with those things.
I know. Those little grippers.
Never have I called them little grippers. Oh, God, you little feet, little grippers.
Okay.
Well, the other iteration of this story states this half man, half goat was actually creeping out of the house. This version of the story has a lot less detail. We don't know where she was, what was going on. But either way, it was exiting the house when she saw it. It's kind of slipping out just corner of their eye. Now, at this point, news of the Heads had spread rapidly and piqued the interest of all of those who specialized in Neolithic art. The Neolithic period is during the late Stone Age, so it ranges between like 10,000 and 2000 BC, so quite old. But with all these experts coming to the house to look at these heads, they had been examined many, many times. And this is where I get a little frustrated. The details fall short of what I would want. But ultimately, it is said throughout all of these articles that the experts struggled to place a date on these stones. It seemed that despite the multiple examinations, each differed in results and findings. I couldn't find a record of who was there and what years they estimated these stones to be from. Ultimately, we just have that they all agreed that they were old, but just differed in the results, I guess.
Okay.
I guess the big thing to me is that they didn't say they looked modern. That would have been important. Oh, these look like modern recreations, or this was made with a more modern kind of like, quick concrete or, something like that. But ultimately, what makes aging stones more difficult is that typically they're not organic. They don't have the carbon-14, so you can't do carbon dating on them, for example. So ultimately, you have to look at what's the location it was found in, what kind of sediment is this stone, and you can get rough estimates for the most part. Now, the stones are currently haunting this house, but eventually they made their way to the hands of Dr. Ann Ross. And though reports differ on how she came into possession of these heads, we do have two different versions. In one, a tenant of the Robsons' house after they moved gave these stones to a local museum from which Dr. Ross acquired them. The other iteration is that Dr. Ross read about these in the very prolific news at the time because they were just so interesting, and she contacted the Robson family directly and acquired them to study them. So Dr. Ross is actually an expert in Celtic artifacts, and she believed when she heard about these heads that they resembled other Celtic stone heads or just generically Celtic art. And so, yeah, if that's your expertise, this would definitely be something you would want to analyze, and it's very likely they could wash up in someone's garden. To give you an idea of the timeline here, this would, I believe, be pretty far after the Stone Age. It would modernize them a little bit. It would bring the stones up a few centuries to either maybe the Bronze or early Iron Age. Ultimately, though, she concluded that the stones were about 1,800 years old, so still quite old in their own right. From here, she wrote a paper about them in 1973 and included within that some very detailed and pretty accurate sketches of these stone heads. So now I want you to take a look at these sketches, and you can see both the boy and the girl statue heads.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one could say it's a little more feminine.
Sure. Kind of like a bob,
Yeah.
you know?
Got a little bit of a bob in terms of the cut. Yeah. Where do these come from? Who made these? Like, what were they made for?
Great question.
They're little dolls or something? I don't know. Like,
Yeah. Some dolls, you know how they have the hard plastic head and the rest is just like cotton and fabric stuffed in. And eventually, yeah, the bottom part would decay and go away, but the inorganic stone head might stick around. It could literally just be a doll with a stone for a head.
that's where my mind went.
Yeah. Now that they're in the hands of Dr. Ann Ross, I'm like, great, we're going to get some real tangible evidence. We have an expert on the field, we're going to get in there. Now, this is where things get really interesting because the occurrences she experienced outside of her more scientific analysis were very similar to what the Robson family was experiencing earlier. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Shady Rays. Task Force, you know that moment. The one where you realize you left your favorite sunglasses at the beach, or maybe on the roof of your car, or at the gas station 3 states away, or maybe you looked over, you wanted to see that shark, that great white, and they plunked into the water below. We've all been there. We've lost those sunglasses. And let me tell you, I want to give my experience right at the top because it's one of my favorite sponsors of all time, Shady Rays. Every single sunglasses pair I have is Shady Rays. I love the polarized lenses. I love the different colors, and I love all the styles. They're constantly changing. So no matter what your style is, they have it for you, and they're all very cost effective and sturdy. They're great. I really do like them. And if you want to support the show, they're a great sponsor to go in for. But Shady Rays, they're here to change the game. These sunglasses are made for real life. Seriously, they're good looking, they're polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive. Like I said, and here's the wild part. If you lose or break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. There's no guilt trip, just replacements. So now you can wear your sunglasses without fear on hikes, at concerts, on the boat when you're looking at the great white, wherever. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. Task Force, we've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com and use our code REDWEB, and you're going to get 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. shadyrays.com, promo code REDWEB, 35% off. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Factor. Fall always feels like a reset. Between back to school, busier routines, and shorter days, finding time to cook can be tough. That is where Factor comes in. Their chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals make it easy to stay on track and enjoy something comforting and delicious, no matter how hectic the season gets. Choose from a wider selection of weekly meal options. They've got those premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp, and they add those at no extra cost. From more personal choices to better nutrition, that's why 97% of customers say that Factor helped them live a healthier life. Feel the difference no matter your routine. Now, I have had the pleasure of enjoying some Factor meals in my time, and let me tell you, I get busy and I get tuned in. I get locked into work and I forget to eat. Factor makes it very, very easy to keep my meals coming and make sure I'm feeding myself proper, well-rounded meals. Got to get those macros, got to get that protein, got to get that fiber, everybody. And that's where Factor comes in. And it's always tasty, it's always easy, and it helps me not forget to eat properly. Eat smart at factormeals.com/redweb50off, and then use code redweb50off to get 50% off your first box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code redweb50off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box, plus get that free breakfast for a year. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Let's talk about that. So she's analyzing these stones, she's bringing them home, she thinks she's found something really interesting from the Celtic age, but these paranormal events started up in her home, and she couldn't quite explain them, but thankfully she did document what she experienced. In fact, there's a recently recovered archive footage from the BBC that published one time and one time only on television in 1976, in which Dr. Ann Ross discusses her experiences openly with the stones and the events she witnessed thereafter. Now, she said that around 2 a.m. at night, the temperature upstairs in her home became icy cold. And from here, I want to give the story in her words as this video has it. Quote, "In the cold of night, something made me look towards the door, and as I looked, I saw this thing going out of it. And it was about 6 feet high, slightly stooping, and it was black against the white door. And it was half animal and half man. The upper part, I would have said, was a wolf, and the lower part was human. And I would have again said that it was covered in a kind of black, very dark fur. And it went out, and I just saw it clearly, and then it disappeared. And something made me run after it. A thing I wouldn't have normally done, but I felt compelled to run after it. And I got out of bed, and I ran. I could hear it going down the stairs, and then it disappeared towards the back of the house. When I got to the bottom of the stairs, I was terrified." End quote.
So wherever these little skulls go, they pop up.
It seems like it. And I couldn't find if she knew that this had happened to the Robson family prior. That one was half goat. This one she's saying is half wolf, with the wolf being up top.
See, that's the interesting thing. So then, like, what is it really, Because you think it would be consistent.
That's why I was kind of like, well, maybe she was primed to see this in the night because she had heard about this, but it's unclear if she knew about this prior. Nor is it clear if Dr. Ross's daughter, Bernice, also knew about these stories because a few days after this sighting by Dr. Ann Ross, her daughter Bernice was coming home. The house was empty because I think Dr. Ross was out with her husband in London and they were returning that evening. So Bernice comes home, opens the front door, and she describes a, quote, werewolf-like creature. And she said that the creature jumped halfway down the stairs, then over the banisters, and then shot down the corridor or the hallway towards the back of the house. And just like her mom, she felt compelled, despite her terror, to follow this creature. And so she ran down the hall towards the music room, and just as she rounds the corner to go in the room where the creature might have or should have been, it vanished. And that's when it dawns upon her that she's actually terrified and alone chasing this creature, only when it's gone.
I mean, right. The adrenaline, I'm sure, kicked in, right?
Sure.
Adrenaline kicked in. She's studying these little stones, and so curiosity got the better of her. But that's a dangerous situation to put yourself in, for sure. And then also, like, when you realize, like, the adrenaline wears off and, you know, you start thinking more clearly, now you're in a place where you shouldn't be, maybe even closer to this thing than you should be.
Ugh. I hate that. Even if you're a non-believer, right? And we try to approach it from all angles, but even if you're not, you're just left in the fallout of this terrifying thing showing up in your house. And then, yeah, the adrenaline wears off and you're like, oh, I'm fully prey. I'm fully just out here. So after having these experiences and hearing what had happened to the Dodd and Robson families, Dr. Ross says, okay, there's clearly something else going on with these heads. I don't want anything to do with this. And she promptly has the heads removed from her home. So this would seem to imply that she didn't know anything about it until after her experience, after her daughter's experience, and then the Dodd and Robson family stories kind of corroborated this. And so she goes, oh, right, and gently or violently thrusts the heads away. So as you might expect, from this point forward, all paranormal activity halted once these stones were taken out of her house. Same with the other houses.
I mean, throw them into 5 different houses and let's see how consistent the story is.
I want to do that. Find these heads and I'll plunk 2 of them in Fredo's place. He's nodding along. He knows. And then I'll plunk them into 4 neighbors' houses that I don't even know and just wait for the headlines. Never in my house, of course.
And that's where you go, Fredo, what's going on? Like, are you experiencing anything weird? Like, why would I experience anything weird? It's like, I dropped off these stone. And it's like, oh, that's wild because they're at Christian's house. And that makes sense why Christian hasn't answered in 3 days.
Dang. How do you feel about that, Christian man in the chair?
It's called a handoff.
I don't like being made a target by Alfredo. I didn't want to get involved. I've been sitting silent this whole time.
Dude, it's a hot potato. I gotta pass it along. Just pass it back to Trevor. He won't expect it to come back at him.
Listen, I won't.
Yeah.
I might actually like it if I saw him again. I'd be like, I missed you.
I missed you. There you are.
Listen, he's just trying to keep you on your toes. You know, on top of those luscious toes that a half goat man might want to get a hold of, you know?
That's what I'm saying. Be locked in at all times.
Always be ready. That's the thing. ABR, you might get dropped off a haunted object at any given time. And if I just start asking questions, assume a scientific study's going down, you know?
Yeah.
What do you see? What are you feeling? You're like, well, these are weird questions. Don't worry. Okay, so Dr. Ross passes them along. And after she does this, the heads change hands several more times before eventually being lost to time. And again, things get very hairy from here. There are a few concrete paths to them getting lost, but there's also conflicting reports. So let me just outline a few raw data points from our various sources. So through the journal, published back in May 1st, 1975, they claimed that the stones were on their way back to the Robson family, who themselves were intending to bury them back in the garden, maybe closing any loops or ending any curses or what have you. Again, that's what was reported back then.
Yeah, I feel like good luck. You know what I mean? Like, put them back and then everything is going to be okay. I feel like you just open Pandora's box.
Yeah, dude, this is like The Ring. When you're trying to, I'll just copy the tape and put it back out in the wild. Once you've washed your hands of this curse, don't get back involved.
Exactly.
Because, like, what if it doesn't fix it? And now you know you got a haunted garden with a wolf man.
I would also, like, be afraid there's more things in the garden.
Dude, that's a great point. Here's the thing, too. is it's like an overgrown garden. It's not like a luscious, like I'll get my tomatoes from here or whatever accent they might have had. Sorry, all of England.
Just like that.
But so it's like a little bit unruly. So yeah, it's entirely possible. Or if you take it from the BBC, these kids pulled these heads from like Hadrian's Wall, which is like a bit of a monument. There's definitely a deep history there that I won't pretend to know, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't go poking around any sort of like archaic stone structures, let alone take any of it home. I don't know.
Yeah, just don't.
Just don't. That's rule number 1. Just don't.
Just don't. Yeah.
Nike, just don't. Now, other reports state that in 1978, the heads were given to a psychic for examination after passing through Southampton University. There's a little bit more context to this one that comes from his own book on the matter entitled The Secret Language of Stone. The author and chemist named Dr. Don Robbins explains that he received the stones in 1977, and he wanted to test what's called the stone tape theory. We've talked about that before on the podcast, and we'll talk about this theory here in a second. But he, after his studies, eventually passed these stones over to a man named Frank Hyde. I can only really see him online named as a dowser, or someone who uses divination with dowsing rods. And after this point in 1978, when he gave them over, this is where the trail goes cold. They're completely in the wind and we don't know where they are. To give further explanation about dowsing, if you don't know, per Encyclopedia Britannica, dowsing is a type of divination used to detect hidden substances. It's popularly used for water, but it can also be used for minerals, treasure, archaeological remains, sometimes even dead bodies. It really picked up steam in the Middle Ages. But regardless of the truth on how they came into whoever's hands, what remains apparent is that no one knows who possesses the so-called Hexham Heads, or where they may be today. They're just somewhere.
I mean, it could just be some exotic collector has them stored away.
You know what? There is easily a billionaire somewhere with a subterranean bunker just filled to the brim with archaic and historic artifacts.
Yep.
And listen, if I win the lottery, we may not know, but there will be signs.
There'll be signs.
Haunted objects will go missing across the world. In a bunker somewhere deep underground with a lot of lead, concrete, and whatever else will keep it all in, maybe a layer of holy water.
Yeah.
I'll know where they are.
You'll know where they are. And
But
then
we'll
the
be
safety
safe.
measure, it all just blows and collapses on top of it.
Absolutely. But all of this is so interesting, especially when you have chemists and archaeologists, Celtic experts, and even psychics getting involved to explore what the truth is behind these objects. But ultimately, this leaves us with several interesting questions about this peculiar case, and we may never know the answers, but what are the Hexham Heads? Where did they originally come from? And who has them now? And will they ever show up again? And attempting to answer some of these questions, we have a pretty wide range of theories. Before we dive in, do you have any instincts, any questions, anything that stands out to you, Fredo?
I do like the fact that we had different professionals try to take a shot at figuring out what this is. I love that. I'll always like that. It's frustrating how these heads go missing. I'd like to think the theory that I have I want to sit with is someone was like, these things are evil. They must be destroyed or contained or locked away. And so now they're lost. I really like the thought of that. It does seem like the curse travels with the actual like items themselves. So I don't know. It's less like it jumps and latches on and more just it just travels with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, even if someone's a scientific expert of some type, it doesn't mean that they can't inherently be biased, you know? And so there's room for sure for Dr. Ann Ross to definitely have known about things and believe in the paranormal and therefore be affected by it. But there's also the other side, is that maybe these objects truly are haunted. That's what the first theory kind of purports, the stone tape theory. And if they are truly haunted, that's why it would kind of emanate from them and travel with them. So let's talk about this theory. Luke Casey, who was a reporter for BBC's Nationwide, had interviewed Dr. Ross about her experience with the stones in 1976. I believe he's the man in the archival footage of Dr. Ann Ross giving her experience. After their discussion, he presented his theory that the Hexham Heads may have somehow absorbed or retained traumatic memories. And this has been, over the years, referred to as the stone tape theory, and it claims that ghosts or hauntings, things like that, occur when information is released from an object that might have absorbed some sort of residual energy of an event, a person, a place, and this was a popular explanation among 19th century psychics, but ultimately it's a prominent and leading theory for the paranormal. It is one of the go-tos. Again, we've talked about it here on this show, and the real wrinkle with that is it has yet to be proven. I believe that's what the chemist Dr. Robbins wanted to prove by way of analyzing whatever might have been in the heads. Some reports state that the heads were heavy in quartz, and quartz has been widely attributed to absorb energies. But beyond the paranormal, this theory also assumes the historical authenticity of these stones. Because if they aren't historic or from a high energy moment, so to speak, it also kind of unsettles the idea that they might have been haunted because maybe it was made 10 years prior. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I like that there was tests done, studies and whatnot. I think it's super important to help validate the story, the stones.
In his book, he kind of describes the stones as like greenish in hue. I believe he kind of assesses what minerals might be in it, but ultimately we don't get a confirmation or at least a strong opinion on they're definitely haunted by way of the stone tape theory. I think that was the leading angle that he approached with, but ultimately that's why I think once he concluded, he then passed on the stones. But this next theory is very, very interesting, and I'm really happy we have an image for this one, because if you take it at face value, it swings wildly one way, but once you see the image, it really leaves it up to interpretation. So without further ado, let's dive in. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Brooklyn Bedding. Task Force, my wife and I were in the market for a new mattress, and that's when Brooklyn Bedding came along, and I have to say, it's one of the best sleeps I've ever had, and that's no joke. Genuinely, we got the Aurora Lux cooling mattress from Brooklyn Bedding, and it has been amazing. It is so comfortable, and it actually fits both my wife and I's different sleep styles perfectly. It gives you what I like to say, that high-end mattress experience without the sky-high price tag. It's comfort on a reasonable budget, dang it, and I like it. Let me tell you, Brooklyn Bedding handcrafts every mattress in their Arizona factory. No middlemen, no gimmicks, just top-tier quality, honest pricing, and real American craftsmanship for a better night's sleep. Not sure which mattress is right for you? Well, you can take the Brooklyn Bedding sleep quiz and find your perfect match in under 2 minutes. Brooklyn Bedding also offers a 120-night comfort trial. Love it, or they'll help you return or swap hassle-free. Go to brooklynbedding.com and use our promo code REDWEB at checkout to get 30% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. That's brooklynbedding.com and promo code REDWEB for 30% off site-wide. Support our show and let them know we sent you after checkout. brooklynbedding.com, promo code REDWEB, 30% off that brand new comfortable mattress. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Ownwell. When that property tax hits your mailbox, it'll hurt knowing that you could have saved more money using Ownwell. Here in Texas, every single year, my wife and I fight our property tax creeping up. We want to save every single month on our payments. We don't need that coming around if we can save reasonably. But here's the thing. We actually went to Ownwell, we put in our address, and we realized we could save an additional several $1,000s. And so now we use Ownwell to fight our property taxes and make sure that we can maximize our savings every single year. There were exemptions that we didn't realize we could have, some refunds and things. And so yeah, Ownwell has been really great for us. Ownwell has local tax experts specializing in property tax protests in multiple counties. Ownwell can protest your county tax assessment if it results in more savings for you. The best part, you only pay if you save. 86% of Ownwell customers get their assessed values reduced and save on their property taxes. Put property tax money back in your pocket in just minutes, and there's no stress or big time investment. Ownwell delivers top results with an average customer savings of $1,102, resulting in hundreds of thousands of happy customers and 5-star reviews. Stop overpaying and start saving with Ownwell. Sign up in 3 minutes at ownwell.com/redweb. That's OWNWELL.com/redweb. So there was a man named Desmond Craig who came forward a few years after who said that he had actually been the one to create these stone heads for his daughter back in 1956. Craig reportedly was the previous owner of the house that the Robsons lived in. We're unable to verify this claim or not. It would be a prerequisite for this to be true, but he claimed that he made 3 of the heads. and the third one must have just simply been lost, hence why the two boys found two of the heads. And Craig was quoted in the town's Evening Chronicle stating this, quote, "I made them. About 16 years ago. I made the heads from bits of stone and mortar simply to amuse my daughter when she was a little girl. I actually made 3, but one appears to have gotten lost. They were out in the garden for years, and I definitely made them. I have been laughing my head off about these heads, and I cannot understand why all this attention is being paid to them." So, okay, great. We have an explanation, right? Case closed.
You're right.
Well, in order to prove the theory that he was in fact the creator of the heads, he was asked to remake them. And I'm like, brilliant. That's the move. Even if it's been 16 years, if you're saying you made them out of stone and mortar, let's see what you got. Prove it. Now, this is where I say the story can swing wildly without this image. So his recreations of the head reportedly looked nothing like the originals, and his claims were dismissed. And thankfully, Kat was able to find an image of Mr. Craig holding up 2 of the recreated, I believe that these are the recreated heads, so otherwise I cannot myself find this image anywhere online. But take a look at this. What do you think with these recreations?
I mean, it is good enough.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about like what, a decade and a half later?
Yeah, 16 years.
Yeah, I mean, like the original heads have a little bit more detail in terms of like the depth of the eyes and all that kind of stuff, but I'd be curious to be like what tools you need and how he approaches it, right? If he's sitting here just like, yeah, I just need these tools, and he just starts going to work, you know, even if he's like, what did I do here? And then like figures it out, problem solve. And like, it's like riding a bike, right? Where it takes a second, but he gets back on it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd be like, okay, I think the process of him doing it is more important than the end result here.
Okay, I like that. I like that angle.
But the end result does give some credence and some credit to, I think he did.
You know what? Because I couldn't find this image again myself, Christian, I'm really curious on your take on these particular 2 heads that he's holding up, because I almost want to say it looks like he's holding up the actual 2 heads that were found and maybe not the recreations.
Oh.
Because the one on the right, I'll reference the sketches from Dr. Ann Ross. We'll put both of those up right now. The one in his left hand looks like the top one from Dr. Ann Ross. It almost looks exact. Even the subtleties of the hair in the back. And so I'm like, okay, is he holding the originals, or are these the ones he recreated that was widely believed to look nothing like these? You know what I'm saying?
And the necks kind of look longer though.
They do, but the one in his right hand had a longer neck. You know, the second one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Christian, yeah, what are you thinking?
I hadn't even thought about it being the originals. I mean, yeah, to me, they look very similar. Yeah, the one in his right hand, the left side of the picture, definitely looks almost 1-to-1, really.
Yeah, it's the other one and the lighting on it that makes it look quite different. So I'm like, it didn't dawn on me, like you said, Christian, until right now that these could actually be the real ones, because this image is just so uncommon.
Man, it's very close.
Yeah, because I don't want to like misspeak here, because again, it was widely claimed that the recreations looked nothing like it, and therefore his claim was thrown out. And I'll admit, I'll look at these stone heads and be like, give me some time, I can make that. I can make these little
really?
heads.
I feel like I did a good job. But then again, if he's, I don't know, maybe it's premeditated, right? Or he's like, I'm going to make these claims, and he's already learning how to make the stone heads, and he's studying the pictures, and he's already like putting it together. And I mean, yeah, it could be like that.
I don't know. I find it so fascinating. Yes, it's kind of like, again, it's one of those more grounded theories. But again, like, I have to take it at face value. The people that were on the ground at the time, you know, I don't know. Interesting for sure. But with that, let's dive into the next couple theories. So now we've talked about the stone tape theory, a little bit more paranormal. Then we talked about a grounded theory. This one leans a lot more paranormal, potentially involving what's known as the Hexham wolf. So the folklore of the Hexham wolf was reignited at the sightings reported by Nellie Dodson and Dr. Ross. This wolf was also called the Allendale wolf and was an actual wolf that was on the loose in late 1904. So we're talking like 66, 67 years prior.
But also we're talking about an actual wolf?
An actual wolf that definitely took the countryside by storm and ingrained itself into folklore. I'll give you the history of this folklore, but the heads being found stoked the attention back on this folklore, and it'll kind of come around to make a little bit of sense, but it's a paranormal explanation. So some reports state that the wolf that had escaped was from a local zoo, while other reports claim that the wolf actually belonged to a local named Captain Bain, who reportedly lost his gray 4-month-old wolf. So the man apparently did have a wolf, and the 4-month-old wolf then, yes, somehow escaped his property. After escaping, it then terrorized the countryside and various towns of Hexham, Allendale, and anyone in between, killing livestock, primarily sheep. And farmers had grown so concerned that they began housing the sheep inside at night to protect them away from the wolf at large. Lights would be left on at night, and a reward was then posted to anybody who could find this wolf and potentially kill it to end this spree. Again, bear with me, I'm giving you the folklore that stems into the theory, but there was actually, interestingly, a Hexham Wolf Committee that was established in the local government to help find and capture this wolf. And then on December 29th, 1904, some railway workers claimed that they found and buried the body of an animal that had been hit by a train. After discussing with the station master, they decided to dig up the body and bring it to the committee for review, because they said, well, the train hit and killed something, so out of respect, we buried it. But now that we know about this legend, it might be this wolf that escaped. So they brought the body to the committee, and they decided that the wolf they presented was too old to be Captain Bain's missing 4-month-old wolf. And I'm sitting here going, who cares? It's a wolf, and did the killing stop? I have to... Anyway.
Right. Yes, exactly. I mean, put 2 and 2 together.
Right. So some believed, yes, this was the wolf. Others believe, no, the wolf was still at large. And the reason why I give you all of this is because, yes, over time, interest in this wolf waned. I don't know really what happened to the loss of life for the livestock and the sheep in the area, but supposedly that also waned. In a grounded reality, I imagine whatever the wolf is passed away, but in this explanation, it is that maybe it wasn't ever a wolf. Maybe what was experienced back then was something to do with what Dr. Ann Ross saw, that half-man, half-wolf entity. And so this is when, now that locals remembered this folklore, now that these stones are out, now that these stories are out, a lot of people really started to speculate that, hey, maybe the Hexham wolf of years past was actually a werewolf, and that creature might still be around. Maybe it returned due to the discovery of the Hexham Heads, and so some then began to believe that the werewolf was maybe feeding off whatever paranormal power was housed in the Hexham Heads, or for some reason, they both coincided because they both arrived at the same time.
Right, but then what about, wasn't like the first iteration with like half man, half goat or something like that?
It was.
So then are we just forgetting about that completely?
I mean, if she saw it in the dead of night, if it was dark, and without further description on record from her, I could understand there being a misunderstanding of whatever animal it might have been. But otherwise, yes, there is no explanation found for the differences in both the half wolf versus the half goat. This to me is very fascinating because it gives a deeper, broader depth to what a werewolf is, rather than just a cursed person that transforms. Suddenly now we have poltergeist level activity. Is the werewolf feeding on that? Is it causing it? I don't know. But I love the idea that we finally have a werewolf as a potential theory on the table.
I know, that's a new one. A werewolf? That's a theory?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And this had me curious. I was looking online. I was like, Kat, are wolves native to the UK? And ultimately, when I was doing some research on that, it seems that historically, yes.
I would think so, yeah.
Late Ice Age, wolves made it there, but I think that they had been completely culled out, fully killed and erased from the island naturally at some point. Again, I did a crash course look. So it is interesting that a wolf is at large. I don't know. It wouldn't be the first cryptid of the UK Isles, though, because, there's a large cat. I think there was the Scottish cat, a wild cat that looks like a domestic cat. But then there's apparently some sort of panther-sized cryptid cat. I don't know. The UK's got a lot of little things like that I think are really cool.
Seems like an actual, based off an actual animal then.
Yeah.
That's the kind of theme that UK is going for here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the last theory that's been tumbled around is actually stemming from Dr. Ross herself. So she theorized that the phenomenon around the heads could be explained by what's called the Celtic head cult. This theory posits that the heads were genuine to the Iron Age, and they were religious artifacts from a Celtic belief system that revered the head, the human head, as the seat of the soul, a source of divine power. Dr. Ross believed that the ancient Celts used carved stone heads to offer up, they were like offerings or maybe powerful guardians for a sacred place, which would make sense if these were in fact found at the historic site rather than the garden in the house. The disturbances kind of expanding on this might have awakened a long dormant guardian entity or unleashed a protective curse of some kind. So basically being disturbed, unearthed, or moved from their original position could awaken something more paranormal. And ultimately this would explain the half man, half animal thing as a potential manifestation of an ancient guardian spirit. Hence why it looks unfamiliar to us, something kind of more out of a horror story. But ultimately, this theory suggests that the heads were not haunted themselves, but were in fact a key to unlocking a much older, potentially dangerous, spiritual power tied to the land. And believe it or not, I think there's something deeply fascinating about that idea. But ultimately, we may never really know, because the heads, wherever they are, they're in the wind.
I know. At some point, maybe they're destroyed.
Maybe they're destroyed. Or, Fredo, maybe there's a really brave, buff scientist out there who's got those stones kind of like wearing them like some sort of jewelry. Maybe he has 2 heavy earrings.
That's baller as hell. If you're just like,
Baller.
You know what? Come after me, curse, werewolf,
dude.
whatever the heck.
Mhm.
I'm in charge.
They're in charge. And if you look closely, down in their basement, they've got a silver chair with holy water wet up chains strapped around this werewolf, tied down. They said, got him.
Yeah.
I would love for there to be a real world monster hunter. And I'm not talking about the mountain men going after Bigfoot. I'm talking
Right.
about
yeah.
a Constantine-esque level person who's got all the gear ready to go. Maybe a reluctant hero. Fredo, that could be you. And they've got the werewolf strapped down.
And it's just containing it from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I like that thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cool Hollywood movie thought.
That's a good thought. But when they pass, man, we're screwed. Those things are getting out.
Yeah, or the burden that they would pass on to the next generation.
Right. Talk about inheritance.
You right? I don't know, man. At that point, get an apprentice.
Right. Yeah. This is a bit of a silly thought, but what if these stones ended up in London and that's how we got the inspiration for werewolf? Yeah, the werewolf in London.
Oh, okay. Now we're talking.
Sunglasses
Now we're
down?
talking prequel, baby.
Yeah, dude.
There you go.
We need the prequel after all these years.
Spawning a whole franchise here.
Yeah. But ultimately, in closing, little is known about the origin of the Hexham Heads. What could have truly caused these strange events? We've dissected a lot of poltergeist stories. We've analyzed, there's a lot of psychology that goes into play there, but the fact that it went into so many different households, I think is really interesting. But now they're gone. Now they're lost. And I would love for them to show up after we post this episode. That happens sometimes.
It does. Sometimes the timing is very odd.
Yeah. I want to get my hands on these little guys. I want to see if I can recreate them.
It does seem like it's not the worst curse. No one's necessarily getting injured or anything. If anything, he's just being a little creep with a weird
You
fetish.
little toe tootsie weirdo.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe it's Weird Wolf. Maybe we just had it wrong,
Oh yeah. If that's the case, then there's gonna be a line of people that are like, "Well, hold on now. I could fix him. He's not hurting anybody. Like, let me take a shot at him. I can fix him. It's okay.
I can fix him, man. We opened up something when we read Akatar and
We
got
really
you involved.
did.
We cracked into a nut that we can't close. This is Pandora's box.
Mm-hmm. Pandora's box got a lot of freaky stuff in it.
Yeah, dude. And so now every episode moving forward is going to have a little dash of freak, a little bit of weird.
Yeah, a little kiss of smut.
But listen, hey, we didn't tell this goat wolf man to go peeping at toes in the middle of the
We
night.
didn't. We're just reading the story for how it is. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Throwing out the alleged facts.
Right. Right. Absolutely. But this one, I was obsessed the moment I first heard about this one. I thought it was perfect for the Halloween season. Task Force, let us know if you heard this before, if you have any other theories, because again, there's a lot of resources that conflict, so you might know some other things that we didn't include. If you do, there's always the comments wherever you listen, but also hit us up on Patreon. We have Discord exclusively for our supporters at redwebpod.com. You guys are always sharing your theories. But yeah, a fascinating case to be sure. And if you're looking for some more spooky scaries here in the season, Fredo and I did put out the pilot for the Scary Stories podcast at the top of the month. Go check it out. It is wherever you listen to this very show. It's probably right here in the feed, so go hang out, check it out, fall asleep to some nightmares.
Right. Damn.
And as we come to an end of this episode, Task Force, mark your calendars, because on October 28th, we are releasing our first Ghost Hunt stretch goal. We revisited Yorktown Memorial Hospital. This time, though, I mean, it's the origin of baby hands, but it got wild. I'll just leave it at that. We felt deeply uncomfortable. We had to end this one early. So much happened. We have so much extra material as well for all you Task Force members on redwebpod.com, our Patreon page. It's 2 weeks out. We'll remind you when it's right around the corner once again, but for the Halloween season, it is coming 2 weeks from now, October 28th. But with that said, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.